Greetings, everyone. I am so excited to be back in conversation with my dear friend and soul brother, Keone Hanalei. And let me just remind you a little bit of his background, and I'll give a more full bio below the video. But Keone comes from an ancient Mu lineage dating back at least 18,000 years, and in a profound way is a wisdom keeper who's here as a messenger to share that ancient wisdom with us in this time of transition on the planet. He's also the founder of Pohala Botanicals and is an amazing alchemist with an understanding of fern medicine in particular. And he is just someone that I so honor. I so honor you, Keone, for your courage, your depth of heart, and your willingness to step out with this ancient wisdom in this time. So thank you.
Follow. Thank you so much, Heather. I appreciate you. I honor you as well. And thank you so much for the ways that you have stepped out and have proliferated your message, your medicine, your body of work as well. And I'm equally as grateful to the audience here as well. Thank you so much for all the ways to which you step out and offer and proliferate your medicine and your body of work.
Beautifully said. And today our conversation is going to focus on the theme of disassembling and reassembling. And I'm very excited to get into this conversation because the time that we're in, this incredible transition time, is so much about deconstructing the paradigms of the past to move into radically new ways of being and a higher level of consciousness. And we see that with Pluto in the final degrees of Capricorn, deconstructing the systems and structures that no longer serve us. And then by January 2024, it will be moving back into Aquarius and will be there until September. And then it will be back in Capricorn for a few months and then fully into Aquarius by the end of November. So we're in a very intense time of transformation. And we're also not only moving into the age of Aquarius, but the end of a 24,000 year precessional cycle. And part of what I so honor with you, Keone, is your ancient lineage remembers the profound meaning of these cycles of change on the planet that happen every 12,000 years. And your wisdom, you've referred to it as, goes back pre-flood. So it goes back prior to the last time of huge change on the planet, which was 12,000 years ago. So share with us some of your wisdom about how we move through these times of disassembling and reassembling.
Oh, mahalo. Thank you so much. And beautifully spoken about what we're all experiencing right now. And I just personally want to share that any time that we go through a kind of transition, it's incredibly uncomfortable. It's also very inconvenient because it can be perceived as volatile because it's unpredictable. And so if I review and observe the world right now, I do see that the world is in revolt, mainly because there is a huge transition that's happening. And my kupuna, my elders would always say about the discomfort and the inconvenience of transition is the key is to relax into it. And the relaxation I feel is that allowance for the reassembling because something is being deconstructed. And I would love to also speak into what exactly is being deconstructed if we review it as a holistic system. But I feel like the best way I want to share this, Heather, is we have a story in Mu. And yes, I come from a very long line of tradition and culture that has been preserved in my family's Oli Helu or our genealogical chant. And a lot of what I'll be sharing today is what has been retrieved in this genealogical chant. I also want to share that the Mu Hawaiians also remember how to not just store, but also retrieve memory from our iwi kuamo'o, our spinal cord. This is not unique to just Hawaiian people. This is, if you are a human being, we believe that the spinal cord is truly an Akashic record and that you can retrieve memory, not just genealogical memory, but also cosmic memory from your spinal cord. And so a lot of what I share as well has been retrieved from my very own spinal cord.
Is it also the cerebral spinal fluid, Keone?
Yes, and one thing that's really beautiful and unique about the cerebral spinal fluid is that that's actually the human essential oil. And so I know that many of you who are listening and watching perhaps participate with the medicine of essential oils. And the human essential oil is the cerebral spinal fluid. The significant thing about the cerebral spinal fluid, in tandem with the iwi kuomo or the spinal cord, is it's what keeps it buoyant. Buoyancy is a very important thing. And one of the things that my kupuna, my elder, shared with me about the most essential or the kamea nui power of a sorcerer, a witch, or a warlock is that they must levitate. And when we hear and talk about levitation, perhaps we feel like, oh, your body must leave the floor, but actually they're talking about your spinal cord must levitate, meaning it must be buoyant within the cerebral spinal fluid.
Wow, that's like the raising of the Jed in ancient Egyptian understanding and mythology. That
Oh, beautiful.
alignment of the spine.
Oh, beautiful. I've never heard that before, Heather, but I love there are so many correlations with ancient Egypt and with Mu culture.
So, yes, go into the story.
Yes. So we have a story in the culture, and it's of this crow, which is called the alala crow. And the crow is observing the disassembled earth. Now, the crow will circumnavigate the disassembled earth 4 times clockwise and 4 times counterclockwise in the objective to reassemble the disassembled earth. Now, first, I just want to sort of translate, what does the earth represent? The earth represents our experience in its totality. So that would include you. So the disassembled earth is also you. It's me. It's everything of this consciousness to which that we are aware of, that we have perception of. One thing I want to share about the crow, the alala, in the culture, in Mu Hawaiian culture, is that this is energy that represents either the longevity or the transference of information from one junction to another. So once again, like we are going through a kind of transformation, we're going through a kind of transference of energy, what other people may call evolution. We're in a very pivotal point of evolution. And the crow would be that to which assist us in ensuring the precision, the accuracy, and also the sustainability of that. Now, when the alala circumnavigates the disassembled earth, why does it do it 4 times in each direction? I think that may be the next question. So we're all holistic. And I feel like holistic, this term holistic, this energy, this philosophy, what you will of holistic, it may not be completely understood. Holistic is really the totality of who and what we are. The exact translation of holistic is no one part is explicable without referencing the whole.
Beautiful.
And so, what are we comprised of? That is the holistic self. Today, because of perhaps a reaction or response to survival and to crisis, we perhaps play favorites. And so we exaggerate different components of us, which means that others are in neglect or in isolation, which would suggest we may not be attuned to our holistic self.
Mm.
And so when the crow circumnavigates, it does it 4 times in each direction to honor the 4 components of the holistic self. And I will share that with you.
I love this.
The first is spirituality. That's the first component of the holistic self, is the spiritual. Now, if we feel into what spiritual is our poetic and it's our intuitive nature. Poetic and intuitive nature. It also has a lot to do with our morality. It gauges our morality. My spirituality really gauges my sense of morality. It's also how I am intuitive. It's how I am poetic. Okay, so we can all take into consideration, am I tapped in? Do I have a fluency with my spirituality, with my spiritual self? Okay. Now, the second is mental. Mental. The best way that I can share what mental is right now, if I were to simplify it, which mental would love to do, to simplify it, is it's organization. It's my skill of organization. Of course, there's so much more that it represents, right? But if I were to just say right now, like a nucleus of what it represents, it's organization. So am I tuned in? Do I have a fluency of my ability and skill of organization? Now, the third is physical. Physical. Physical, of course, is our body, right? But physical also represents our senses.
Mm.
Our senses, the body, our senses, position, position. And so am I tuned? Am I fluent in my physical self? Okay. And then the fourth and the final is the emotional. It's my emotional self. And the emotional self represents how we are interactive and also how we are expressive. My interactive and my expressive nature. And so to that, am I attuned? Am I fluent with that? So all these 4 aspects, physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional, comprise the holistic self. Do I have a fluency in all of these, and all of these met in equal measure, meaning I'm not playing favorites? And an example is there may be many of us who are very attuned and fluent with our spirituality, but not our physical. In fact, there may be a complete rejection of the physical, which could cancel out the entire system of the holistic self. It may be the other way around. There may be a fixation and an obsession on the physical, but the spiritual is something that is deemed disposable, non-essential. That would also cancel out the holistic self. Remember, holistic means no one part is explicable without referencing the whole. They all must be met in equal measure. So the alala will circumnavigate. Each rotation represents one of the aspects of the holistic self, to refine it, to resurrect it, to honor it. And it does it 4 times in one direction. And then it will change its direction and go 4 times in the opposite direction. Now, the interesting thing about that, about why it changes direction, is because we live in an animate world of form, which means that aspects of us, in order to apply a kind of integrity or even an authority, there must be a kind of opposition. It must be challenged so that we can deepen into our confidence of that.
Mm.
This is also the nature of how particles create matter, because we are in an animate world. And so, like when the headlines hit many years ago about the Hadron Collider in Switzerland, and tapping into the Higgs boson. When I first heard that, I said, "Oh, they just reverse engineered the story of the Alala."
Oh, that's great. That's great. Can I ask you something about that, Keone? It's
Yeah.
also interesting to me that it's 4 and 4, adding up to 8, which in so many ancient traditions is the number of balance, harmony. And also, I know in my own shamanic training that, like when I walk the medicine wheel, you're meant to walk it one way and circumvent it one direction and then go the opposite direction to both release what needs to be released and then reconfigure, re-energize what's needing to be integrated. And what you're describing in such a profound way is how do we go through that rite of passage of clearing what needs to be cleared to be reassembled back in balance again, back in, as you said, that holistic, harmonic way of being. Does that
Yes,
make
most
sense?
certainly. Thank you so much. And it is truly a rites of passage because we can feel that the four rotations in one direction is all about cleansing. It's about cleansing the spiritual, the physical, the mental, the emotional. What disruptions are there? What has infiltrated that? And then we change directions, which is when we fill that, which is that to which we are now evolved as. There is that room and that space now to be occupied in that to which serves us in our evolution. And this is really also the responsible way for us to evolve. Otherwise, we're carrying trauma into the ages. And Heather, you speak so beautifully about what we have carried from past ages, such as when we transited from the age of Aries, we brought war. From the age of Aries, we didn't bring that willpower that Aries is known for. We didn't bring that confident willpower. Instead, because we did not cleanse within that rotation, we brought war into the next age.
Exactly. And I think that's so part of why Pluto's profound transits, particularly with its squaring the lunar nodes, which we're still in until later this month, is so much a planet of transformation and alchemy through what needs to die. And then being in the liminal time of healing and transformation to then move into the new form, the rebirth in a new, empowered, harmonic way. So it seems like that's so much of what this story with the crow is about. How do we disassemble what's out of balance? Be in that time of metamorphosis to emerge in a new way, a whole way.
Most certainly. And what's so important too about that circumnavigation in the opposite directions is that they're done in equal measure. Because one of the greatest laws of consciousness in the universe is that we get to honor fairness. Fairness. There's no greater diplomacy than fairness. And so we get to be just as responsible for the disruptions that then we get to be responsible for the pleasantries and the beautiful things so that everything can be met in equal measure. And thus we evolve by the law of fairness.
Which, we've talked so much about those connections between your lineage and ancient Egyptian lineage, and that fairness and that principle of harmony and balance is Ma'at in ancient Egyptian, but I know it really correlates with one of your founders of your lineage.
Yes, yes, most certainly. There are so many correlations, Heather. In fact, the story of Alala circumnavigating the disassembled earth is very likened to the story of Isis and the disassembled body. Heather, can you speak a little bit about that correlation?
Yes, I mean, it is so amazing. We were talking about this a little bit before we got on to do the interview, but it's what's extraordinary to me in terms of what you're describing and the story of Isis and Osiris is they both relate to the processional cycle also. I mean, the story of Isis and Osiris is about the way in which they were leaders of the land together, and Osiris's brother, Set, it really is that duality of good and evil, of light and dark. He was jealous of his brother's power, so he set out to destroy him. And he creates this box with 72 conspirators, which is a number of the processional cycle, to trap Osiris. And then he sends him down the river Nile. And Isis, in her love for Osiris, searches for him until she finds him, brings him back, revives him, and she gets impregnated and with her son Horus. But meanwhile, Set is still out to get his brother and destroy him. So he finds Osiris, chops him into pieces, and scatters them far and wide, disassembling him entirely. And Isis once again finds all the parts of Osiris, finds 13 out of 14 parts of him, and fashions the 14th part to bring him back into wholeness and then allow him to transition into the lower world. But it's all about this process of our own, I think, human conflicts and how we get out of balance with each other and go through this disassembling in order to be moving through this transition time. And Isis, who is representative of the star Sirius, our binary star that is what guides us through the processional cycle, the Great Mother, is the one who then supports Osiris, supports us in how we heal, come back into wholeness, are reassembled in order to move into new life. So it is so resonating with your story.
Oh, that's so, thank you for sharing that. And I'm reminded of how the reassembling, when done in this protocol, really builds the integrity so that as we do evolve into what we are destined into, our legacy is also transportable. And because I work with lineages and I have access to a lineage that spans so long, this is really one of the core principles of who I am, and then what I've been taught from my elders is how do we transfer our legacy in a kind of integrity. And not nowhere in my own olihelu, my ibikuo mo'o, that to which I was told, do I find anyone or anywhere saying or suggesting that there should be a kind of bypassing that happens. And I feel like the revolt and the tumult that so many of our brothers and sisters are experiencing right now is because the discomfort is so great. And really coming into how can one properly integrate trauma? How can one properly integrate it as so that they can come to terms with how they may and deserve to evolve. And thus they also perpetuate their own legacy. Because a legacy is not just about a lineage, like I have access to so many different generations. We're also a legacy, each individual one of us, that culminates to the music of the spheres. We're all that instrument or that song. That's our legacy. And are we showing up in the responsibility of that? Or is that song out of tune? And if that song is out of tune, or if that instrument is out of tune, what do we get to do in order to ensure that its pitch is once again viable for the evolution?
Oh, that is so beautiful, Keone. And part of what you're saying that's so profound is we each have a unique note, a unique expression that's part of that symphony of the spheres. We're all needed, but that we are in a time with a lot of cacophony, a lot of disharmony. And as you said, it's such a turbulent time, and I think it activates a lot of trauma, a lot of fear, a lot of confusion. and chaos. So, talk a little bit about, I mean, you and I know in our own personal lives that process of going through disassembling, reassembling. Can you talk a little bit about your experience of that and how that's kind of the microcosm of the macrocosm in terms of how we hold that awareness in the larger context of what we're dealing with around the planet?
Oh, I thank you for this invitation. I would love to share this because in my own disassembling and reassembling, I've located something very precious. And this is what informs and guides me as I move forward. And I would love to share this with everyone. Perhaps it will reactivate your own awareness and interest in it. I was disassembled to make a long story short. I was disassembled because I was a consummate performer. I learned right away that my true nature was not compatible to what the exterior conditions has established. My sense of spirituality, my kind of intellect, the way that I communicate with the world was actually deemed very threatening because it was not compatible to the established narrative, especially in patriarchy. And so I learned right away that in order to be a part of a group or a community, I need to perform. And so I performed. I did all the things that I felt I needed to do in order to be a member of this group. But unfortunately, that performance severed me so much from my true nature that I just became exhausted. I became exhausted with very little fuel because it's my true nature that is the cosmic fuel that keeps all of us going. And I had severed myself from that fuel, which meant that the fuel that I received was the approval of others. And the disrupting thing about the approval of others is that it's unreliable.
Well put.
So you can do so much before, oh, I better perform again. And I need to, level up that performance to the point where my exhaustion reached a point where I said, I need relief.
Mm.
I need relief. I found relief in a severe drug addiction, in a severe opiate addiction. And of course, I feel like many of our listeners can relate to this because we all reach a point where in our reaction, relief is what we need because we just need to pivot. We just need to pivot. And some of us in our reaction, we turn to addiction in all its forms. Mine was a severe opiate addiction. And I would consider that my complete disassembling. That was the moment where it was shattered. It was completely shattered because my only objective in life was to further my escape, further my numbing out, further, further, further. My addiction led to me becoming homeless. My homelessness and my addiction led to me becoming a criminal. Uh, Me as a criminal led to me being incarcerated. And when I was incarcerated and I was no longer had the access to the drugs, to the lifestyle that allowed me to escape, that's actually when my reassembling began.
Mm.
It was out of absolute trauma. And I just want to share with the viewers too, is that my kupuna, my elders would say, boy, there's two ways to which you may evolve. One is trauma. One is trauma, but that's also a choice. You don't have to choose trauma. The other option is grace. And they say grace means that you wake up and willingly decide to shift your life. You willingly, you
Wow.
don't need a dramatic impetus such as trauma to switch you. But of course, Kupuna, my elders are so diplomatic. They said, boy, whatever you choose, it's neither right nor wrong. You'll end up in the same place. So have fun. I chose the trauma, Heather. And but it did bring me back to that point of reassembling. Here's what I want to share with you and the audience about what I discovered in my pivotal time of the initial spark of the reassembling. I work with energy centers in Mu. We call them the Unihipili, which is the internal feminine, the Uhane, which is the internal masculine, and the Aumakua, which is the internal androgyny. Now, there's something that the internal feminine will remind us, especially when we come to a point of crisis. I want to share it with all of you by way of explaining the actual glyph or the symbol of the internal feminine, the Unihipili. The symbol is an upside down T. It's the upside down T. Now, when we feel into what is the upside down T in mathematics, that means that which is perpendicular. Perpendicular means to right angles. Okay, so let's hold that for a moment.
Mm.
To right angles. Now, let's go a little bit further. That upside down T, what does that represent in Chinese hieroglyphics? Chinese are known to have some of the most archaic and ancient preserved and translated hieroglyphics. The upside down T in Chinese hieroglyphics is autonomy.
Wow.
The definition of autonomy is my right to exist. My right to exist. Now come back to mathematics. To right angles, right being met in equal measure. Now, what does this translate for me in that moment of depravity? That meant the most important thing for me to affirm right now in my reassembling is that I belong.
Mm, 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 mm. Wow. Beautiful.
I belong.
And that you matter.
Yes. And that was the moment I became a convergence. And that I could withstand all the things that needed to converge in order for me to reassemble myself, because it all has a home within me. This is a sacred space for everything to converge so that we may organize a reassembly. And thus, I immediately and simultaneously became responsible for my life and everything to which I've done, no longer needing to escape, meeting everything in equal measure. And so perhaps initially this may sound so simple, but I just want to share with this audience, this is how lives become changed, is when you can affirm within yourself that you belong. Because when we feel into patriarchy, this is part of the conditioning of patriarchy. Patriarchy likes to tell us that we have to earn our belonging. We have to prove our belonging. No wonder we're all performing. No wonder we're all exhausted. No wonder everything and everyone is unreliable and suspicious until we affirm first and foremost that we belong. The Unihipili, the divine feminine, that which is the noun of us. Noun means that to which is established.
Mm.
The feminine brings us back into our sacred establishment. I belong. I have autonomy. I no longer need to prove that. That is the great pivot.
Yeah, it's so powerful, Keone, and it's about valuing authenticity. I mean, not only are we in a culture that demands that we perform and fit in, but that we fit those normative ways of being that aren't about our true self. And so it feels like there's something so powerful in that sacred feminine energy about that sense of belonging, but also the importance of your authenticity, of being who you truly are.
Right, right. Because Heather, ultimately, what we get to transfer to the Uhane or the divine masculine, which is our verb or our active component, is we're transferring to our verb what our contribution is.
Mm.
Comes from that place of authenticity. What do I have to offer this phenomenal world? What is my medicine that's transferred from the medicine of all? What is my unique translation of the medicine of all that gets to see the light of day? Literally, the masculine is initially an architect and an engineer in its receival of instructions. But the goal is that that architect and that engineer is infused with meaning. That authenticity that you speak of so beautifully, our connection to that is our individual meaning, which turns that architect and that engineer into an artist. then we are simply showing up in the artistry of our life.
Ah, powerful. And it's so, from my perspective too, in terms of being grounded in the sacred feminine, is about, I love the right angles, and it's about being in right relationship, being grounded in connection to the earth, being in right relationship with ourself, first of all, to be in right relationship with all around us. And then the sacred masculine is able to act on that and act consciously from that balance, harmony, right relationship. And then
Oh,
we're in our wholeness.
yes, in our wholeness, most certainly. And when I see the events playing out on our planet right now, what I observe is that a majority of people have not affirmed they belong. And that's why their masculine is, I'm just going to say it like this, having a tantrum because it doesn't feel like it belongs. And so until we honor it with belonging, we bring it into its sacredness. For me, when I locate and acknowledge something as sacred, there's nothing but incredible care that I choose to offer it, to deliver it with. But because many of us are incapable or unwilling to affirm that we belong without needing that to be affirmed or validated by the exterior conditions, this means our verb aspect doesn't have a place to land. And so it's lashing out, it's in revolt, it's having a tantrum.
And it creates, so well said, Keone, and it creates this sense of confusion, disorientation, crisis. And as you were saying earlier, when we're caught in that way of survival that is about trying to accommodate the external expectations, trying to fit in ways we reconfigure ourselves to belong, it leads to an incredible sense of emptiness. And
Hmm.
then our identity becomes that false self, that persona that we've constructed to perform. And when we're in a time where Pluto is deconstructing the paradigms and systems and structures all around us, then I think people's sense of identity, many people's sense of identity is collapsing because those ways of fitting in and belonging no longer work. And I
Mhm.
love what you said about the paths to transformation. It can come through having to go through that trauma to rediscover ourselves, to go through that healing process, to be rebirthed. Or we can also step into it willingly and be in that cauldron of transformation to move more and more fully into our true selves.
Yes, and a complete reorientation into our free will to do so. And that's how friendly this consciousness in this universe is. It's constantly negotiating with us. It's
And
saying,
trying to help us wake up.
right, it's saying, what is your choice? You can come to the table and negotiate your own evolution. It doesn't require extremities. And especially, I remember, like my kupuna would say about that, they would say, no matter what path you choose, path of trauma or the path of grace. But they would say, just consider this, boy. The path of grace is going to be a lot less destructive, not
Mm,
just for you, but think about all of us.
mm, yeah, yeah. Which is such a statement about the world right now.
Yeah.
We have this incredible opportunity, and I do believe the energies of the earth and sky are trying to call us into healing and into disassembling and reassembling in a whole way so that we can move into harmony and into higher consciousness, but we can choose. And I think you're right. There's a lot of reactivity and it's a great way to put it, reactivity and temper tantruming going on.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
fear of letting go of those old forms and also the fear of transformation.
Which will be alleviated, that fear in the affirmation of one's belonging.
Yeah.
At least that's been my experience. is the moment that I have affirmed, and my affirmation of my belonging has a kind of longevity to where I have a skill of coping that I once did not have, where I translated any discomfort as a crisis. Now, in my belonging, I truly know how to discern between a true crisis and a mere inconvenience, and that is life-changing.
Well, also, I feel like, and I know this about you, that you face the challenges with the consciousness that this is an opportunity for transformation and deeper growth. So instead of resisting those experiences that may feel challenging, you step into it to be in your own path of spiritual growth and transformation.
Yes, Heather, and to even simplify that, it's about allowance. It's about allowance, which comes in the trust that the universe and the sophistication, the elegance of the universe is really on our side. It's a friend. It's not an enemy. And once I disrobed the monster that once was consciousness and the universe, I found something very different when I disrobed it. It was this friendly playground that said, I have offered unto you materials to cultivate your dreams and your fantasies. Enjoy. Enjoy.
I love it. And not only that you belong, but that you're loved,
Yes.
held, and supported in this process of stepping into your true self, into your joy, into your path and purpose.
At the threshold of the evolution of transiting from the antiquated into the evolved, there's one thing that rings in my whole system, and I believe it. And it says, Keoni, there is nothing you have ever done to make me love you less.
Mm,
There is nothing you can ever do to disqualify you of my love.
mm, mm, mm. We all need to take that in. Beautiful. So tell us about this prayer.
Ah, yes, the prayer, Heather, the prayer. One great thing about having access to this lineage is I have access to a lot of really beautiful traditions and relics as well. And so I am versed in many prayers of the Mu lineage, of the Mu people. And the Mu dialect, I just want to speak into this just for a moment. The sophistication of the pitch and the timbre and the alchemy of these words and these vibrations, it's really reorienting in itself because it reorients us back into a time of what we can be perceived as incredible purity of existence. And when many of us feel clogged or contaminated with a lot of narratives that just don't feel true, but yet they overpower so many of us. A lot of my story of why I continued in the performance was because I was paralyzed by it.
Mm,
I didn't know how to shift through it. I was just overpowered by it. And so I was subordinate to the perpetuation of a performance, especially when that performance is glamorized in a current culture that glamorizes deception, glamorizes lying to one another, glamorizes performances. And so I got caught up in that. But luckily, I also have these really beautiful tools, such as these prayers that help to reorient us. Um, Now, my ancestors, uh, there's a beautiful way to which they have shared their experience with the disassembling and reassembling. And it's very poetic. And it's in a prayer. This prayer is 18,000 years old. It's found in our Oli Helu as far back as it goes to my ancestor Mahat, who we believe to be the founder of the lineage. Now, when I say founder, I just want to clarify this. I've said this before, but it's important to clarify again. That doesn't mean that's where our lineage begins.
mhm, mhm,
What we believe happened was Mahat in 18,000 BC was the first relative to resurrect the lineage, the cultures, the traditions, to begin to archive it again, which tells us that prior to that, there was a kind of cataclysm to which humanity was thrown in a kind of blackout. But Mahat reached a point where there was a kind of recovery that occurred. And so the archiving began once again. So that's what I mean by the founder. He is responsible for resurrecting the culture and the lineage once again. But I want to share this prayer with you. And I'm going to say it 3 times in the Mu dialect. And then I'm going to share it once in English. I'm going to translate it in English. And then I'd love to go over this prayer, to disseminate this prayer, to share how it relates to the disassembling and the reassembling. So, my friends, I will invite you to close your eyes and allow this prayer and the sound of this prayer to just thunder through your body, calibrate your system. Okay, invite it into your system. This is an 18,000-year-old prayer preserved in the Olihelu and the Iwi Kua Mo'o of the lines of Mahat. My name is Keoni Hanalei, and I'm so honored to utter it here and now. Hia rene, te lea a mene, a i'o, o pai pai lalo i tāhia, e o la au te re pure, tasta moa la hie. Hia rene, te lea a mene, a i'o, o pai pai lalo i tāhia, e o la au te re pure, tasta moa la hie. Hia rene, te lea a mene, a i'o, o pai pai lalo i tāhia, e o la au te re pure, tasta moa la hie. Lay me down within the all of awe, before the uncreation of this ground. It is within the most intense prayer. Find you here, like I know I can. Now, mahalo, thank you so much. And if I may begin to assist in doing a ka'avale. Ka'avale in my language means to dissect something, to find its hidden meaning or its deeper meaning, the nerve of it. And we begin with this lay me down within the all of awe. Lay me down within the all of awe. If you listen to Heather and our last conversation, we talked about that earth is an altar and that we all may lay ourselves down on this altar. That is proper protocol. And so this prayer is reiterating that. Lay me down within the all of awe. Something that's really important about that is it's also speaking into our belonging and our right to do that. We belong on the altar. We are sacred enough to be within this altar. Yes, we are. Lay me down within the all of awe. And we are so dynamic that we are the all of awe. And I love that it says awe, AWE, correlating to this consciousness, this universe is a mystery, and that's okay.
And so, awe is the beginning of wisdom, the sense of wonder.
Beautiful. It's like that opening, right? It's like that's where all potential is allowed, not what is favored, but all potential is allowed. Lay me down within the all of awe. Then it says, before the uncreation of this ground. Now, we can even review that before, because in the context of this prayer, it's before as this witnessing. I'm standing before the uncreation of this ground or the disassembling. I do not look away. I do not look away. There is a sense of accountability and responsibility, but also union with the disassembling as well. We get to unite and we get to accept and we get to relax into the inconveniences of evolution itself.
Mm.
Not only favor the pleasantries of life, which takes us into dissociation. And so before the uncreation of this ground, I bear witness, it's okay. I
Mm.
do. It is within the most intense prayer. Now, in the utterance of that in the language, we say tere pure. Even the way that I say it, tere pure, the way I say pure would suggest that that P is capital. So when I say the most intense prayer, it means capital prayer. It's not like the prayer, it's like, it's the prayer. So, what is the prayer? And we just spoke about that. It's our belonging.
Yeah.
It's the feminine prayer. The feminine prayer is belonging. And we can even feel that just thundering through our body, that our own personal feminine, regardless of what gender you identify as, we are 100% masculine and 100% feminine. Do you hear the thundering prayer of your feminine that says, I belong? I belong. I am sacred. We are sacred. We belong. We are an energetic match to the sacredness. So it is within the most intense prayer. It is within belonging. Find you here
Mm.
like I know I can.
Mm.
Find you here. Now, this is the nature of that short sentence right there. Find you here. Of course, it's talking about ourselves, right? Like, I'm going to find my authenticity, just like you shared, Heather. I'm going to locate my authenticity. But it's even deeper than that. It's even talking about our cosmic memory. It's talking about our legacy. And, one of the reasons why disassembling is so threatening to so many of us is because we become attached to so many things, including people. And so it's like we want to hold on and we don't want to allow for a disassembling because I'm so attached to things. But in this prayer, it says, it is within the most intense prayer. Find you here, meaning this is where we will always converge. We will always converge here. We will not be lost amongst one another. We will not find you here like I know I can. And that part that it ends in, like I know I can, is bringing us into the confidence
Mm.
that is required for perseverance.
Mm.
Like I know I can. That's not arrogant. That's saying within my belonging, within my unlimited, omnipotent connection to all things, like I know I can.
Mm.
And then we can also feel that's also honoring our divine masculine. That is the deep power of the divine masculine, is that willpower that is not in the interest of harm, but togetherness, unification. It's that willpower, right, of Aries, that
In
willpower,
right relationship.
yeah, the confidence of right relationship. I will ensure that we are oriented in right relation. I will succeed. Find you here like I know I can.
I just really want to honor that prayer and your bringing that into this time when we so need that ancient wisdom. And as you were speaking it in your Mu dialect, I could just feel these waves of energy washing through me. There's something so powerful in the sound, in the frequency, even not understanding all the meaning of the words until you translated it. It was healing me, impacting me, part of that transformational process. And the other part of it, Keone, that comes through listening to that prayer is that part of the disharmony that we're in this time is not only our disconnection from our true selves, but our disconnection from that awareness that we are interconnected with all that is. We are a unique fractal expression of the sea of cosmic consciousness.
Mm.
And when that prayer feels like I release my false self, my sense of ego, to remember that I belong and am part of the sea of all that is, the sacredness of all that is. And I honor the disassembling in order to come back into unity with my true self and the cosmic consciousness that loves me, holds me, and has never forgotten me.
Oh, so beautifully expressed, Heather. Yes, that rings so true with this prayer. And also, Heather, thank you so much for just sharing your experience of how that prayer can calibrate oneself. Our ancestors of all cultures were master coders. We have a different translation of coding today because we are in perhaps a technological quantum leap, but our ancestors were master coders. And so languages and the utterance and the assembly of words and glyphs were a way to which they code things. And when we honor these codes, it's as if we are experiencing the power of that code. It's really now an experience, not an idealization. And I feel like that's what we get to all once again invite into our field is to come out of the fixation of idealizations and allow ourselves to come back into actual experiences, which really grounds us and then takes us deeper into the original prayer of our belonging.
Mm, mm, beautiful. Yes. It's not about conceptual understanding, it's about relational, experiential understanding. And the words then hold the power of transformation, of magic, of the mystery, because it's reverberating through our cells, through our energy fields, every aspect of who we are.
Most certainly, most certainly. And one of the things too in this prayer just reminds us that, in a time of tumult and a time of great discomfort, that there is a guarantee. And the guarantee is that we're going to be reassembled. It's going to happen, but we get to choose how that happens
Mm.
in our reassembling. And so are we going to translate the disassembling as a shattering? Or are we going to translate the disassembling as an opportunity to, as you shared, Heather, to once again come into a right relation with the true aspects, the true nature of who we get to be right now, in the relevance of what we get to be in order to accommodate this incredible shift?
Yes, so it's really honoring the deconstruction and the death in order to move into the new life. And I love what you're saying, Keone, about we can choose how we participate in that. And I think it is so profound that we've been in this square with Pluto and the lunar nodes since July, with Pluto in Capricorn, South Node in Libra, North Node in Aries. So it's a critical karmic choice point. And Pluto's applying to the South Node. Will we come back into right relationship, Libra, right balance with ourselves, with all that is, in order, North Node in Aries, to move into a new expression of ourselves and new forms culturally. And I love that Eris Xena this whole time has been right beside the North Node saying that new expression of Aries is not going to be anything like the past. And Erisina is the planet that's 44 degrees off the ecliptic. She's not following the path of all the other planets. She's saying, dare to be different, dare to be your true, authentic self, and follow your own unique path, to
Mm,
be your own expression of the light of consciousness, to be a part of the harmony of the spheres.
mm. Oh, beautiful. And Erisina is affirming that we have a right to do that. We have her, and I feel like she's even whispering to Aries that last line of the prayer, like I know I can, like I know I can, right? Building up to the confidence that what we have shifted through is now antiquated and we may evolve and usher forth this beautiful contemporary paradigm to which we and all other things deserve. And we may do that in our artistry. And so may we all be those artists. And that is really my prayer, when I feel of what's the greatest way for a patriarchy to abdicate, because I feel like it will come to a kind of abdication, because abdication is also a fair. And I feel like the abdication of patriarchy is for patriarchy to once again relax into the divinity of what it means to be fair.
And as you talked about, this highest center is androgyny, to honor that we are 100% sacred feminine energy, 100% sacred masculine energy, and holding that wholeness. That's
Eh,
the Aquarian paradigm. Then we're not caught in that polarization and duality of it's got to be one or the other. It's the unity of both and honoring their diversity and their different ways of being.
Oh, Heather, so beautiful because, being in participating in a third dimension, the third dimension is all about contrast. And contrast means differences. And so we get to cope and dance and play with the differences rather than find them so threatening.
Well, Keone, I am so honored that you shared this with us and that you are in such a courageous way being a wisdom keeper and messenger in this time, and that you've moved through your own profound process of disassembling and reassembling. You know the journey. And so you're so guiding us in being willing to step into that journey ourselves and be participating in this process of transition, transformation into new ways of being. So thank you.
Mahalo. Thank you so much. And on behalf of my kupuna, my elders, and my lineage, thank you so much, Heather, for offering me the opportunity to share with this audience. And I truly hope, and it's my wish and my dream and my prayer, um, if anything, through this whole conversation, is that we all get to have a conversation with our own belonging and to begin to negotiate with that and then come into your own acknowledgement, recognition, and acceptance of that belonging. Like I shared, for me in my personal life, this is truly how lives become changed. The person I was just 7 years ago is very different from who I am right now. The life I live today, 7 years ago, even beyond that, I would have thought this could only be a fantasy. The live I live today, I'm living my fantasy because I affirm my belonging. I listen to the song and the prayer of my Unihipili, my internal feminine. So mahalo.
Oh, thank you, Keone. And I thank all who are listening and the ways that we as a community are supporting each other in being in this time of transformation to feel we belong and can step into our true selves. Thank you.